The stagecoach lurched violently as it careened around the mountain bend, and Olivia Graham pressed her trembling hands against her mouth to keep from screaming as dust billowed through the windows and gunshots rang out behind them. The driver cracked his whip, shouting at the horses to go faster, while two masked riders pursued them through the Arizona desert, their intentions clear as the morning sun beating down on the parched landscape. This was not how Olivia had imagined her arrival in Jerome Junction would go, though perhaps it was fitting that even her journey to start over would be marked by chaos and fear. When the stagecoach finally burst into the small mining town nestled in the Black Hills, the pursuers veered off, apparently unwilling to follow into civilization. Olivia stumbled out onto the dusty street, her cream-colored dress streaked with red dust, her carefully pinned dark hair coming loose around her pale face. It was September of 1882, and Jerome Junction was a bustling settlement built on copper mining, with false-fronted buildings lining both sides of the main thoroughfare and the constant sound of the stamp mills echoing from the mountainside above. She had traveled all the way from St. Louis, carrying everything she owned in two battered carpetbags and the last of her money sewn into the hem of her skirt. More than that, she carried the weight of shame so heavy it felt like iron chains around her neck. Olivia had fled Missouri after her world collapsed, after the scandal that had destroyed her reputation and left her with nowhere to turn. Here in Arizona territory, she told herself, no one would know. She could reinvent herself, become someone new, someone clean. The afternoon sun was merciless as she made her way down the wooden sidewalk, searching for the boarding house Mrs. Henderson had mentioned in her letter. Jerome Junction was bigger than she had expected, with several saloons, a general store, a church with a white steeple, and what appeared to be an assay office. Men in dusty work clothes moved purposefully through the streets, and she caught more than one curious glance aimed her direction. Strangers were probably common in a mining town, but a woman traveling alone was still enough to draw attention. She found the boarding house at the north end of town, a two-story structure painted white with green shutters. Mrs. Henderson turned out to be a plump woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She showed Olivia to a small room on the second floor that overlooked the street, and despite its sparse furnishings, it felt like sanctuary. "You look done in, dear, Mrs. Henderson observed as she set down fresh linens on the narrow bed. "Why don't you rest up, and we'll have supper at 6. There's a wash basin there, and I'll bring you some hot water." Olivia thanked her, trying to keep her voice steady. Once alone, she sank onto the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. The tears came hot and fast, tears of exhaustion and relief, and the constant, gnawing shame that had become her closest companion. She had thought distance would ease it, but the memories followed her like shadows. Marcus's lies, her own naivety, the way everyone in St. Louis had looked at her afterward. The whispers in church, the former friends who crossed the street to avoid her, her own father's rage and disappointment. Marcus Whitmore had been a successful banker, handsome and charming, and when he had shown interest in Olivia, she had felt like the luckiest woman alive. He had courted her properly, met her family, made promises about their future together. It was only after she had trusted him completely, after she had allowed him liberties that should have waited for marriage, that she discovered the truth. Marcus was already married, with a wife and 2 children in Chicago. He had been using Olivia, amusing himself during his extended business stay in St. Louis, and when his wife arrived unexpectedly, the scandal erupted like a powder keg. Marcus had left town immediately, returning to Chicago and his legitimate life, while Olivia faced the consequences alone. Her reputation was destroyed. In 1882, St. Louis society, a woman's virtue was everything, and once lost, it could never be recovered. Her father, a respected attorney, had been furious. Her mother had wept. The shame had poisoned everything, made it impossible to show her face anywhere without feeling the weight of judgment. So she had taken what little money she had saved, along with a small sum her mother had secretly given her, and fled west. Mrs. Henderson's cousin in St. Louis had mentioned that the boarding house proprietor sometimes helped women find positions as seamstresses, cooks, or governesses. Olivia could sew well enough, and she was educated, literate, and desperate. That desperation had carried her across half the country to this rough mining town in Arizona Territory. That evening at supper, Olivia met the other boarders. There was Mr. Patterson, an older man who worked at the assay office, and two miners named Bill and Thomas who were polite but rough around the edges. Mrs. Henderson served beef stew with biscuits, and the men ate quickly, talking about the mines and whether the copper vein was playing out on the eastern slope. "What brings you to Jerome Junction, Miss Graham?" Mr. Patterson asked kindly, and Olivia felt her stomach clench. "I'm looking for work," she said carefully. Mrs. Henderson's cousin suggested she might know of opportunities. "Can you cook?" Mrs. Henderson asked practically. "The restaurant owner's wife just left him, went back east to her family. He's been looking for someone to help in the kitchen." Before Olivia could respond, Thomas, the younger of the two miners, spoke up. "The Carson Ranch is looking for a housekeeper, too. I heard Jackson Carson mention it in town last week. His old housekeeper passed on this spring, and he's been managing on his own since." Mrs. Henderson nodded thoughtfully. "That might suit you better than working in town, dear. It's about 3 miles south of here, good land for cattle. Mr. Carson's a decent man, runs a fair operation from what I hear." The idea of working at a ranch, away from town and curious eyes, appealed to Olivia. "Do you think he would consider me?" "Only one way to find out," Mrs. Henderson said. "I can ask around tomorrow, get word to him that you're looking for a position." That night, lying in her narrow bed listening to the distant sounds of the stamp mills and an occasional burst of laughter from one of the saloons, Olivia allowed herself a small measure of hope. Perhaps here, in this wild territory so far from Missouri, she really could start over. Perhaps the past could be left behind like the miles of prairie and mountain she had crossed. The next morning dawned clear and hot. Mrs. Henderson sent word to the Carson Ranch through a supply wagon heading that direction, and by mid-afternoon, a rider came to the boarding house looking for Olivia. He was a weathered cowhand named Pete, who looked her over with frank curiosity, but said little beyond that Mr. Carson would like to meet her if she was interested in the housekeeper position. Mrs. Henderson arranged for Pete to drive Olivia out to the ranch in a wagon the following morning. Olivia spent the evening washing and pressing her least travel-worn dress, a simple navy calico, and trying to calm her nerves. She needed this position. Her money would not last long, and she had nowhere else to go. The ride to the Carson Ranch took them south along a dusty road that wound through scrub-covered hills, dotted with juniper and mesquite. The landscape was harsh but beautiful in its way, with red rock formations rising against the brilliant blue sky and the distant mountains hazy in the morning light. Pete pointed out landmarks as they went: a dry wash where flash floods sometimes ran in summer, a rocky outcrop where mountain lions had been spotted, the boundary markers of the Carson property. As they crested a low rise, the ranch spread out before them. It was situated in a broad valley with a creek running through it, the water low this time of year but still flowing. The ranch house was built of adobe and timber, long and low with a deep porch running across the front. There were corrals, a barn, a bunkhouse, and several other outbuildings that spoke of a working ranch. Cattle grazed in the distance, and Olivia could see several men working with horses in one of the corrals. Pete drove the wagon up to the house and helped her down. "Wait here, miss. I'll fetch Mr. Carson." Olivia stood in the yard, very aware of her city clothes and her own nervousness. She smoothed her skirt and adjusted her bonnet, trying to look composed and capable. She had no real experience as a housekeeper beyond managing her family's household in St. Louis, but surely she could cook and clean well enough for a ranch. The man who emerged from the barn was not what she expected. Jackson Carson was tall and broad-shouldered, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that were startlingly blue against his sun-bronzed skin. He wore dusty work clothes, a leather vest over a chambray shirt, and moved with the easy confidence of a man completely at home in his environment. There was something solid and capable about him, and when those blue eyes focused on Olivia, she felt suddenly very aware of herself. "Miss Graham." His voice was deep with a slight drawl. "I'm Jackson Carson. Pete said you're looking for a housekeeping position." "Yes, sir," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house mentioned you might need help." He studied her for a long moment, and Olivia felt color rising in her cheeks. She wondered what he saw, a city woman clearly out of her element, someone running from something. She lifted her chin slightly, meeting his gaze. "Have you kept house before?" he asked. "I managed my family's household in St. Louis," she said. "I can cook, clean, do laundry and mending. I'm a hard worker, Mr. Carson." "This isn't St. Louis," he said, not unkindly. "It's rougher out here, the work's harder. Why'd you come west?" The question felt like a stone in her chest. "I needed a fresh start," she said, which was true enough. Something flickered in his eyes, understanding perhaps, or curiosity. "Fair enough. Come inside, let me show you the house." The interior of the ranch house was larger than it appeared from outside, with a main living area that held a stone fireplace, a dining table, and comfortable if worn furniture. There was a good-sized kitchen with a cast-iron stove, a pantry, and windows that let in plenty of light. Jackson showed her 3 bedrooms, explaining that he used one. The others were for guests or hired men when they stayed over in bad weather. There was a separate room that served as an office where he kept his ranch accounts. The house was not dirty exactly, but it had the neglected look of a place kept by someone who did not have time for housekeeping. Dust had settled on surfaces, dishes were stacked unwashed in the kitchen, and the whole place needed a woman's touch. "I'll be honest with you, Miss Graham," Jackson said as they returned to the main room. "I need help. I've been trying to manage on my own since Mrs. Fletcher passed, and it's not working. I'm up before dawn with the cattle and don't get back till after dark most days. The house is suffering for it, and so's my cooking." He gave her a slight smile. "Pete and the other hands refuse to eat with me anymore." Despite her nerves, Olivia felt a smile tug at her own lips. "I can help with that. The position includes room and board," he continued. "You'd have your own room here in the house. Wages would be $20 a month. You'd cook for me and occasionally for the hands when we're working close to the house. Keep the house clean, do laundry and mending. It's full days, 6 days a week, Sundays mostly off unless we have guests." Does that sound acceptable? $20 a month was more than fair, more than she had expected. Room and board meant security, a place to stay, food to eat. It felt like salvation. "It sounds very acceptable, Mr. Carson. When would you want me to start?" "Soon as possible," he said. "If you need to collect your things from town, Pete can drive you back in the morning, bring you and your belongings here tomorrow afternoon." "That would be perfect," Olivia said, relief flooding through her. "Thank you, Mr. Carson. I promise you won't regret this." His blue eyes studied her again, and she had the unsettling feeling that he could see more than she wanted to reveal. "We'll see," he said, not unkindly. "Everyone deserves a chance to start over, Miss Graham." The words struck her deeply, and she wondered if he somehow knew if her shame was written on her face for everyone to read. But his expression was neutral, not judgmental, and she told herself she was being paranoid. He could not possibly know about Missouri, about Marcus, about any of it. Pete drove her back to Jerome Junction, and Olivia spent the evening packing her few belongings and thanking Mrs. Henderson for her help. The boarding house proprietor seemed pleased with the arrangement. "Jackson Carson's a good man," she said. "Lost his parents young, built that ranch up mostly on his own. He's fair and honest, and you'll be safe there." Safe. The word resonated with Olivia. She had not felt safe in so long, not since her world had collapsed in St. Louis. Perhaps here, at her ranch in the Arizona wilderness, she could finally find that safety. The next afternoon, Pete arrived with the wagon as promised. Olivia's belongings fit easily in the wagon bed, a testament to how little she had left of her old life. As they drove south toward the ranch, she felt as if she was leaving the last remnants of Olivia Graham from St. Louis behind, becoming someone new. Jackson was working in one of the corrals when they arrived, but he came to help carry her bags inside. He showed her to the smallest bedroom, which faced east and had a window that looked out over the creek. The room held a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a small wardrobe. It was simple but clean, and it was hers. "Get yourself settled," Jackson said from the doorway. "There's no rush to start today. Tomorrow's soon enough." But Olivia, eager to prove herself, shook her head. "I'd like to start now if that's all right. I could make supper for you and the hands." He looked surprised but nodded. "All right then. There's salt pork in the pantry, beans, some potatoes. Not much to work with, I'm afraid." "I'll manage," she assured him. After he left, Olivia quickly unpacked her things, then headed to the kitchen to assess the situation. It was worse than she had thought, with a layer of grime on the stove and counters, the pantry in disarray. But she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She built up the fire in the stove, heated water for cleaning, and started scrubbing. Once the kitchen was clean, she inventoried the supplies and started on supper. By the time the sun was setting, she had made a pot of beans with salt pork, cornbread, and had managed a dried apple pie from supplies she found in the pantry. It was simple fare but hearty, and when Jackson and 3 of his hands came in for supper, the smell of home cooking filled the house. The men's faces registered clear surprise and pleasure. They washed up outside and came to the table with wet hair and clean shirts, treating supper like a formal occasion. Jackson introduced the hands: Pete, whom she had already met, a grizzled older man named Sam, and a younger cowboy named Tommy who could not have been more than 20. "Miss Graham, this is the best meal I've had in months," Sam said after the first few bites. "Mr. Carson, you made a fine choice hiring her." Jackson's eyes met Olivia's across the table, and she saw approval there and something else, something warmer that made her heart skip strangely. "I believe I did," he said. Over the following days, Olivia threw herself into her work with an almost desperate energy. She woke before dawn to have coffee ready when Jackson came in from the early feeding. She cooked 3 meals a day, cleaned every room in the house until it gleamed, did laundry in a big tub behind the house, mended clothes and linens. She kept herself so busy that she fell into bed exhausted each night, too tired for the shame and memories to haunt her. Jackson was a good employer, respectful and appreciative of her work. He often ate breakfast and supper with her, and they fell into an easy routine of conversation about the ranch, the cattle, the weather. He told her about growing up in Texas, moving to Arizona territory with his parents when he was 15, losing them both to influenza within a year of each other when he was 19. He had worked other ranches, saved money, and eventually bought this land and built his own place. There was pride in his voice when he talked about the ranch, and Olivia found herself genuinely interested. She told him much less about herself, offering only vague details about St. Louis, her family, her education. She did not mention Marcus or the scandal, and Jackson, gentleman that he was, did not press for more. But sometimes she caught him watching her with a thoughtful expression, as if he could sense the pain she was hiding. Autumn settled over the Arizona landscape, the brutal summer heat giving way to cooler mornings and evenings. The cottonwoods along the creek turned gold, and the sky seemed even bluer against the red rocks. Olivia began to feel something she had not experienced in months, a tentative sense of belonging. The ranch felt like home in a way nothing had since she left Missouri. The work was hard but satisfying, and the solitude was healing, but the shame remained. It lived inside her like a disease, poisoning the small moments of peace she found. At night, alone in her room, the memories would come flooding back. Marcus's hands on her, his lies whispered in her ear, the terrible moment when his wife had confronted her in the middle of the street. The look on her father's face, the whispers that followed her everywhere. She had been so stupid, so naive, so easily deceived. She had given Marcus everything, believing his promises, and he had taken it all and left her ruined. Sometimes she would cry silently into her pillow, consumed by self-loathing. She had been raised to know better, taught the rules that governed a decent woman's behavior. And she had broken those rules, believing herself in love, trusting a man who had no honor. The shame was not just about what others thought, it was about what she knew of herself. She had failed in the most fundamental way a woman could fail. She was soiled, ruined, unworthy of respect or love. More than a month after Olivia arrived at the ranch, Jackson made a trip into Jerome Junction for supplies. He invited her to come along, saying she might enjoy a change of scenery and could pick out any food supplies she wanted for the kitchen. Olivia agreed, partly because she did need a few things, but mostly because she enjoyed Jackson's company more than she wanted to admit. The ride into town was pleasant, with Jackson driving the wagon and pointing out changes on the landscape, places where he wanted to build new fencing, a spot where he had seen a small herd of deer that morning. He was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that made her laugh, something she had not done enough of lately. In Jerome Junction, they stopped at the general store. While Jackson arranged for feed and other ranch supplies to be loaded, Olivia browsed the shelves, selecting flour, sugar, coffee, and some spices that the ranch pantry lacked. She was examining a bolt of fabric, thinking it would make good curtains for the kitchen, when she heard a woman's voice behind her. Olivia Graham. She turned, her heart sinking, to see Eleanor Whitmore standing in the store entrance, Marcus's wife. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. Leaner was a handsome woman in her late 30s, well-dressed even by frontier standards, with dark hair and an expression of cold fury. "I thought it was you," she said, her voice carrying through the store. "Did you really think you could run far enough that I wouldn't find you?" Other customers were staring now, and Olivia felt panic rising in her throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, I didn't know you were here. I never expected—" "Of course you didn't," Eleanor cut her off, moving closer. "You ruined my marriage, destroyed my family, and then you ran away like the coward you are. Did you think there would be no consequences?" "I didn't know he was married," Olivia said desperately, though she knew it sounded like a lie, like the excuse it was. "He told me he was single." "I would never have. You're a liar and a whore," Alina said, her voice shaking with rage. "You may have fooled people here, but I know what you are. Everyone should know." Olivia felt tears burning in her eyes, shame crushing her chest. She wanted to run, to disappear, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. The other customers were whispering now, and she could feel their judgment like physical blows. Then Jackson was there, stepping between her and Alina with quiet authority. "That's enough," he said, his voice calm but firm. Alina turned her fury on him. "Do you know what she is? What she did? She seduced my husband, carried on an affair with him for months." "I said that's enough," Jackson repeated, and there was steel in his voice now. "I don't know what happened between you all back east, and frankly, it's none of my business. Miss Graham works for me, and I won't have her harassed." "She's a home wrecker," Alina spat. "She has no morals, no decency. You're a fool if you trust her." Jackson's jaw tightened. "Madam, I'm going to ask you politely to leave. If you have business with Miss Graham, it can wait for another time and a more private location." For a moment, Alina looked as if she might argue further, but something in Jackson's stance made her reconsider. She drew herself up, glaring at Olivia with pure hatred. "This isn't over," she said coldly. "Everyone will know what you are." She swept out of the store, leaving a terrible silence behind. Olivia stood frozen, unable to look at anyone, least of all Jackson. All the security she had built over the past weeks crumbled around her. They knew now. Everyone would know. The shame had followed her even here, and there was no escape. "Come on," Jackson said quietly, touching her elbow. "Let's finish up and get home." Somehow she moved, following him through the store in a daze. He completed the purchases quickly, arranging for delivery of the larger items, and helped her into the wagon. The ride back to the ranch was silent, heavy with words unspoken. Olivia could not stop crying. The tears came in waves, unstoppable, and she pressed her hands over her face, trying to contain them. She had been so stupid to think she could outrun her past, to believe she could start over. The shame was part of her now, permanent as a scar, and everyone would know. Jackson would send her away. Where would she go? What would she do? When they reached the ranch, Jackson stopped the wagon in front of the house but made no move to get down. He sat quietly while Olivia tried to collect herself, and finally he spoke. "You want to tell me about it?" "You heard her," Olivia said bitterly through her tears. "I'm exactly what she said. A home wrecker, a woman without morals. I seduced her husband." The words tasted like poison. "I don't believe that," Jackson said calmly. "You should," Olivia said, turning to look at him finally, her face wet with tears. "It's true. I had an affair with a married man. I destroyed his family. I disgraced my own family. I can't forget my shame, Mr. Carson. It follows me everywhere. It's who I am." Jackson met her eyes, and his expression was gentle, understanding. "Tell me what really happened." So she did. Sitting in the wagon in the autumn afternoon light, Olivia told him everything. About Marcus, his courtship, his lies. How he had told her he was unmarried. How he had promised to marry her. How she had trusted him completely. How his wife had arrived unexpectedly from Chicago. How the truth had come out. How Marcus had left while Olivia faced the scandal alone. She told him about her father's rage, her mother's tears, the whispers and stares, the complete destruction of her reputation. "I was such a fool," she said, her voice breaking. "I should have been more careful. I should have questioned his story, demanded to meet his family, something. But I trusted him, and I let him ruin me. And now I have to live with that shame forever. I thought I could run away from it, but I can't. It's part of me. I'm ruined, Mr. Carson. Used goods. No decent man will ever want me, and no respectable woman will ever accept me." When she finally fell silent, exhausted by the confession, Jackson was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned in the wagon seat to face her fully. "Your past doesn't define your future here," he said, and his voice held absolute conviction. "You hear me? What happened back in Missouri, that's behind you. It doesn't change who you are now or who you can become." Olivia shook her head, unable to accept his words. "You don't understand. In St. Louis, my reputation was everything. Without it, I'm nothing. I gave away my virtue to a man who lied to me, and that can never be undone. I'm damaged, Mr. Carson, soiled." "That's society talking," Jackson said firmly. "That's the rules of a world that puts all the blame on women and none on the men who deceive them. This Marcus, he's the one who should be ashamed. He's the one who lied, who broke his marriage vows, who used you and then abandoned you to face the consequences alone. You were a victim of his deception, not a willing participant in destroying his marriage." "But I should have known better," Olivia protested. "I should have been stronger, more careful. You should have been able to trust a man who said he loved you," Jackson interrupted. "You shouldn't have to suspect everyone of lying. Marcus Whitmore is a scoundrel and a coward, and what happened is his fault, not yours." "Society doesn't see it that way," Olivia said bitterly. "A woman's reputation is her most valuable possession, and once lost, it can never be recovered. I will be marked by this forever." Jackson was quiet for a moment, then said, "Out here, we care more about what a person does than what happened to them. You've worked hard, kept your word, treated everyone with respect. That's what matters to me. That's what will matter to anyone worth knowing. Mrs. Whitmore will tell everyone," Olivia said dully. "The whole town will know by tomorrow. You'll be associated with a woman of questionable morals. It could hurt your reputation, your business dealings." "Let them talk," Jackson said, and there was a hard edge to his voice now. "I don't give a damn what Olivia Whitmore says, or what anyone in town thinks. You're the best housekeeper I've ever had. You're honest and hardworking, and your personal business is your own. If anyone has a problem with you working here, they can take it up with me." Olivia stared at him, unable to quite believe what she was hearing. "You're not dismissing me?" "Why in God's name would I do that?" Jackson asked, looking genuinely puzzled. "You haven't done anything wrong. You certainly haven't done anything that affects your ability to keep house and cook." "But the scandal is back in Missouri," he said firmly. "This is Arizona territory. Fresh start, remember? You came here for that, and I'm telling you that you can have it. Your past doesn't define your future here, Olivia. Not unless you let it." The use of her first name, the absolute certainty in his voice, the kindness in his blue eyes, it was all too much. Olivia felt something crack open inside her, and she began to cry again, but differently this time. These tears were not born of shame, but of relief, of gratitude, of the overwhelming sense that someone finally was on her side. Jackson handed her his bandana, and she pressed it to her face, trying to compose herself. "I don't know what to say," she managed. "Thank you doesn't seem sufficient." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just stop carrying all that shame around. It's not yours to carry." "I don't know how to let it go," she admitted. "It's been part of me for so long." "One day at a time," Jackson said. "Start by believing that you deserve to be here, that you deserve a fresh start. Because you do, Olivia. Everyone does." They sat in the wagon a moment longer, and Olivia felt something shift inside her, the smallest easing of the terrible weight she had been carrying. Jackson believed in her. He knew the worst of her story and was not turning her away. It was more than she had dared hope for. "Now," Jackson said, his tone becoming more practical, "let's get these supplies unloaded and you can make us some supper. I'm starving, and Pete and the boys will be too after working all day." The normalcy of the request, the assumption that things would continue as they had, was exactly what Olivia needed. She nodded, climbing down from the wagon with Jackson's assistance, and together they carried the supplies into the house. That evening, as she cooked supper, Olivia felt as if she was moving through a dream. The shame was still there. She did not think it would ever fully leave, but it felt less crushing now. Jackson's words echoed in her mind. Your past doesn't define your future here. She wanted desperately to believe him, to believe that she could build a new life in Arizona territory, free from the mistakes that had destroyed her old one. Over the next week, the fallout from the encounter with Alina Whitmore played out much as Olivia had feared. Word spread through Jerome Junction and the surrounding ranches. Some people were sympathetic, others judgmental, but everyone had an opinion. Mrs. Henderson sent a note assuring Olivia of her continued friendship and support. A few of the neighboring ranch wives made a point of visiting, ostensibly to welcome Olivia to the area, but really to assess the situation for themselves. Through it all, Jackson remained steadfast. He made it clear to anyone who mentioned the matter that Olivia's past was her own business, that she worked for him and did her job well, and that he would not tolerate any disrespect toward her. His position as a successful rancher gave him influence, and gradually the talk died down, replaced by new gossip and concerns. Olivia found that Jackson had been right about one thing. The West was different from St. Louis. People cared more about what you could do than about who you had been. The scandal that would have permanently ostracized her back east became just another piece of frontier drama, interesting for a moment but ultimately less important than cattle prices, water rights, and the coming winter. Still, the shame lingered inside her like a sickness. She went about her work efficiently, keeping the house spotless and meals regular, but she felt hollow. At night, she lay awake reliving her mistakes, hating herself for her naivety, her stupidity, her weakness. She had trusted Marcus, believed in him, given herself to him, and it had all been a lie. How could she ever trust her own judgment again? How could she ever believe in anything good? Jackson seemed to sense her ongoing struggle, though she tried to hide it. He was patient, kind, always respectful of her space and her privacy, but she caught him watching her sometimes with an expression of concern. He began finding small ways to draw her out of herself, asking her opinion on ranch decisions, sharing stories that made her laugh, encouraging her to take rides around the property to see the landscape. One afternoon in late October, he asked her to ride out with him to check on some cattle in the far pasture. Olivia had learned to ride reasonably well since coming to the ranch. It was necessary in such country, and she saddled the gentle mare Jackson had designated as hers. They rode south through the valley, the autumn air cool and crisp, the sky impossibly blue above them. The cattle were fine, grazing peacefully near the creek. Jackson dismounted to check a section of fence, and Olivia stayed on her horse, looking out over the landscape. It really was beautiful here, wild and harsh but honest in a way that St. Louis had never been. There were no false fronts, no pretenses, just rock and sky and the constant challenge of survival. "Olivia," Jackson said, and she turned to find him standing beside her horse, looking up at her. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said. "You think you'll ever be able to forgive yourself?" The question struck her like a physical blow. She looked away, blinking back sudden tears. "I don't know," she admitted. "Some days I think maybe eventually. Other days I feel like I'll carry this shame forever." "What would it take?" he pressed gently. "What would you need to believe that you deserve happiness, a future?" Olivia shook her head helplessly. "I don't know. To undo the past, to go back and make different choices, that's impossible." "So you're going to punish yourself forever for being human?" Jackson asked. "For being deceived by a man who was a practiced liar?" I should have known better, she said, the old refrain. Why? Jackson challenged. Why should you have suspected him? If he was as convincing as you say, if he took care to hide his true situation, how were you supposed to know? Are women supposed to investigate every man who courts them, assume everyone is lying until proven otherwise? Maybe, Olivia said. Maybe that's safer. It's no way to live, Jackson said firmly. You can't go through life trusting no one, believing in nothing. That's not living, that's just existing. At least I won't be hurt again, she said quietly. Jackson was silent for a long moment, then said, Come down here. Puzzled, Olivia dismounted and Jackson took her horse's reins, tying both horses to a nearby tree. Then he turned to face her, his expression serious. I'm going to tell you something, he said, and I want you to really hear me. What happened to you in St. Louis was terrible. That man used you and betrayed you, and the society you lived in blamed you for being victimized. That's wrong, Olivia. It's cruel and unjust, and you didn't deserve it. But if you let that experience poison the rest of your life, if you let it keep you from ever trusting anyone or believing in anything good, then Marcus Whitmore wins. He doesn't just get to ruin your past, he ruins your future too. Is that what you want? No, Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face now. But I don't know how to stop it. You start by believing that you're worthy of good things, Jackson said, stepping closer. You start by accepting that you made a mistake in trusting the wrong man, but that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. We all make mistakes, Olivia. We all trust the wrong people sometimes, make choices we regret. That's part of being alive. But the consequences were harsh and unfair, he agreed, but they don't have to be permanent. You're here now in a new place with people who care about you. Mrs. Henderson, Pete, and the boys, me, we see who you really are and we think you're pretty special. Don't you think our opinion matters more than what some hypocrites back in St. Louis think? Olivia looked up at him through her tears, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine caring. Why do you care so much? She asked. Why does it matter to you whether I forgive myself or not? Jackson hesitated and something flickered across his face, something intense and vulnerable. Because I've come to care about you, he said finally. More than I probably should, given that you work for me, but I can't help it. You're smart and kind and hardworking, and you deserve to be happy. It hurts me to see you carrying this burden, punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. His words hung in the air between them, and Olivia felt her heart start to race. Jackson, she said softly, using his first name for the first time without thinking about it. I care about you too, but I'm not sure I have anything good to offer anyone. I'm damaged. Stop, he said firmly, reaching out to take her hands. You're not damaged, you're hurt. There's a difference. Hurt can heal if you let it. I don't know how, she said desperately. Then let me help you, Jackson said, his voice rough with emotion. Let me show you that not all men are liars, that trust isn't always misplaced, that you can still have a future worth living. Olivia stared at him, afraid to believe what she was hearing, afraid to hope. Are you saying? I'm saying I want a chance, Jackson said. A chance to court you properly, to show you what an honest man looks like. I'm not asking you to forget the past or pretend it didn't happen. I'm just asking you to believe that the future could be different. I work for you, Olivia said, grasping at practical objections because the emotional ones were too overwhelming. It wouldn't be proper, then you're fired, Jackson said immediately, and at her shocked expression he smiled slightly. I'm joking. Mostly. Look, I know it's complicated, but we can figure it out. The important thing is whether you're willing to try, whether you can imagine letting someone care about you again. Could she? Olivia searched inside herself, past the shame and fear, looking for any spark of hope. And found it, surprisingly, still alive despite everything. She did care about Jackson. She admired his strength, his integrity, his kindness. Being around him made her feel safe in a way she had not experienced in so long. Could she let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she deserved a second chance? "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I'm wrong again? What if I trust you and I turn out to be another Marcus?" Jackson finished. "I can't promise you'll never be hurt again, Olivia. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise you that I'm exactly who I appear to be. I'm not hiding a wife somewhere. I'm not going to lie to you or use you. I'm just a rancher trying to make a living in Arizona territory, and I'd like to do it with you beside me." The simplicity of it, the honesty, touched something deep inside Olivia. She looked at Jackson, really looked at him, and saw a good man offering her something precious, the chance to start over, to build something new. Her past would always be part of her story, but maybe Jackson was right. Maybe it did not have to define her future. "All right," she said quietly, and saw joy flash across his face. "I'll try. I can't promise I won't be difficult, that I won't struggle with trust and fear, but I'll try." "That's all I'm asking," Jackson said. And then, very gently, he pulled her into his arms. Olivia stiffened at first, old fears rising, but Jackson just held her, his embrace warm and safe and entirely different from Marcus's possessive touches. This felt like shelter, like home. Slowly, she relaxed against him, letting herself be held, letting herself feel protected rather than threatened. They stood like that for a long time, the Arizona wind blowing around them, the horses shifting quietly nearby. When they finally separated, Olivia felt lighter somehow, as if the confession and Jackson's acceptance had eased some of the weight she carried. "We should get back," Jackson said, his voice a little rough. "It'll be dark soon." They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence, and when they arrived, Olivia went to prepare supper with a strange new feeling in her chest. It took her a moment to identify it. Happiness. Tentative, fragile, but real. Over the following weeks, Jackson courted her with patience and old-fashioned propriety. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers from the hills, a ribbon he picked up in town that matched her eyes. He asked her to sit with him on the porch in the evenings, and they talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's thoughts and dreams. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give, never made her feel pressured or uncomfortable. Slowly, carefully, Olivia began to trust again. She began to believe that Jackson was truly who he appeared to be, that his feelings were genuine. More than that, she began to believe that maybe she deserved this, that her past mistakes did not disqualify her from future happiness. The shame did not disappear overnight. There were still bad days when the memories overwhelmed her, when she looked in the mirror and hated what she saw. But Jackson was always there, steady and patient, reminding her that her past did not define her. Gradually, the good days began to outnumber the bad. In early December, the weather turned cold, and one morning they woke to find snow dusting the red rocks and juniper trees. Olivia stood on the porch watching the sunrise paint the white landscape pink and gold, and felt Jackson come up behind her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "It really is," she agreed. "I never imagined Arizona could be so lovely in winter." "Olivia," Jackson said, and something in his tone made her turn to look at him. He took her hands in his expression serious. "I know we haven't been courting long by traditional standards, but out here, people tend to make decisions faster. Life's uncertain, and there's no point waiting when you know what you want." Her heart started pounding. "Jackson, I love you," he said simply. "I think I started falling for you the day you arrived, dusty and determined and scared, but trying so hard to be brave. You're the strongest person I know, Olivia, and the kindest. You've been through hell, but you're still here, still fighting, still trying. I admire that more than I can say. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you if you'll have me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple gold with a small blue stone. "This was my mother's," he said. "I'd be honored if you'd wear it. Will you marry me, Olivia?" Tears filled her eyes, but for once they were happy tears. "Are you sure?" she asked. "You know my past, the scandal. I know that you're a good woman who was badly treated," Jackson said firmly. "I know that you deserve to be loved and cherished and treated with respect. I know that I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. That's what I'm sure of." "Yes," Olivia said, the word bursting out of her. "Yes, Jackson, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Olivia kissed him back, pouring all her hope and gratitude and growing love into it. This was nothing like Marcus's kisses, which had been all demand and possession. Jackson kissed her like she was precious, like she was cherished, and it made her feel like she was finally coming home after a long, painful journey. They were married 3 weeks later in the little church in Jerome Junction. Mrs. Henderson served as Olivia's attendant, and Pete stood up with Jackson. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, and Olivia spoke her vows with a full heart, meaning every word. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, she felt as if a weight had finally been lifted from her shoulders. She was Olivia Carson now, starting a new chapter, building a new life with a man who loved her for who she truly was. The celebration afterward at the ranch was lively, with neighbors and friends coming to wish them well. Even some of the people who had been quick to judge after Alina Whitmore's accusations came to offer congratulations, having apparently decided that Jackson's faith in Olivia spoke well enough of her character. Olivia accepted their good wishes graciously, no longer caring as much what people thought. She had Jackson's love and trust, and that was enough. Their wedding night was tender and patient, with Jackson taking care to make Olivia feel safe and cherished. He understood without being told that she needed gentleness, reassurance, proof that intimacy could be about love and mutual respect rather than just physical desire. Afterward, lying in his arms in the darkness, Olivia felt something she had not experienced in over a year: peace. "I love you," she whispered to Jackson. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." "I'll always believe in you," he promised, kissing her forehead. "Always." The winter passed in quiet contentment. Olivia settled into her new role as Jackson's wife, continuing to manage the household, but now as a partner rather than an employee. They worked side by side on the ranch, planning for the future, discussing whether to expand the herd or invest in better breeding stock. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's company. In the spring, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with complicated emotions, joy mixed with fear. She confided her worries to Jackson one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "What if I'm not a good mother?" she asked. "What if my past somehow affects the baby? What if people judge our child because of my mistakes? Our child will be loved and wanted," Jackson said firmly. "That's what matters. And anyone who tries to judge an innocent baby for something that happened before they were born will answer to me. Besides," he added more gently, "you're going to be a wonderful mother. I've seen how you care for everything and everyone around you. Our baby will be lucky to have you." His confidence helped ease her fears, and as her pregnancy progressed, Olivia found herself genuinely excited about becoming a mother. This baby, conceived in love and wanted by both parents, felt like the ultimate proof that her past truly was behind her, that she had successfully built a new life. Their son was born in October, during the golden autumn weather that Olivia had come to love. The birth was difficult with Mrs. Henderson and a midwife from town attending, but when Olivia finally held her baby, all the pain was forgotten. He was perfect, with Jackson's blue eyes and a cap of dark hair, and when Jackson saw his son for the first time, he cried. They named him James after Jackson's father. Little James was a good baby, healthy and relatively content, and Olivia discovered that motherhood came more naturally than she had feared. She loved everything about it, the sweet baby smell, the tiny fingers that gripped her so tightly, the way James would calm when she sang to him. As the months passed and James grew, Olivia found that the last remnants of her shame had finally faded. Oh, the memories were still there. She did not think she would ever completely forget what had happened in St. Louis, but they no longer had power over her. When she looked at her life now, her husband, her son, her home, she felt only gratitude and love. One evening in the spring, when James was 6 months old, Olivia was rocking him to sleep when Jackson came to stand in the doorway of the nursery. "You look happy," he observed quietly. "I am happy," Olivia said, looking up at him with a smile. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." "No more shame?" he asked gently, and she knew he was not mocking her but genuinely checking on her well-being. "No more shame," she confirmed. "Or at least not the way it was before. I understand now what you were trying to tell me that day when Alina confronted me in town. My past doesn't define my future. I made mistakes, trusted the wrong person, but that doesn't make me a bad person. It just makes me human." Jackson crossed the room to kiss her forehead, careful not to disturb the drowsing baby. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I know how hard you've worked to get to this place." "I couldn't have done it without you," Olivia said softly. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You showed me that love doesn't have to hurt, that trust can be rewarded. I'll never be able to thank you enough for that." "You don't have to thank me," Jackson said. "Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done. You and James, you're my whole world." As Olivia watched her husband gaze down at their son, his expression full of love and wonder, she felt something she had never expected to feel again: complete and utter contentment. The shame that had nearly destroyed her was gone, replaced by the knowledge that she was loved and valued exactly as she was. The years that followed were full and rich. The ranch prospered under Jackson's capable management, and Olivia proved to have a good head for the business side of ranching, keeping accounts and corresponding with buyers. They had 2 more children, a daughter they named Grace 2 years after James, and another son, William, 2 years after that. The house that had been so empty and neglected when Olivia first arrived was now full of life and laughter. Children ran through the rooms. The kitchen always smelled of cooking, and love permeated every corner. Pete and the other ranch hands became like family, with Uncle Pete being particularly beloved by the children, who loved his tall tales and his ability to whittle amazing toys from scraps of wood. Olivia maintained friendships with several women in Jerome Junction, including Mrs. Henderson, and she became known in the community as a woman of integrity and kindness. There were still a few who remembered the old scandal, who whispered about her past, but their voices grew fainter each year, drowned out by the evidence of the good life she was living. When James was 10 years old, he came to Olivia with questions about where she had come from, having overheard something in town about his mother being from St. Louis. Olivia had known this day would come, and she and Jackson had discussed how to handle it. She sat James down and told him an age-appropriate version of the story. She explained that she had come to Arizona after something difficult happened in Missouri, that she had made mistakes and been hurt, but that she had come west to start over. She told him that his father had helped her see that the past did not have to define the future, and that their family was proof that good things could come from painful beginnings. James listened seriously, then said, "So you were brave enough to start over, even when it was hard?" "I tried to be," Olivia said. "I think that's good," James said. "Papa always says that what matters is what you do now, not what happened before." "Your papa is a very wise man," Olivia said, pulling her son into a hug. That evening, after the children were in bed, Olivia and Jackson sat on the porch as they often did, watching the stars come out over the Arizona landscape. It was May of 1894, 12 years since Olivia had arrived in Jerome Junction, carrying nothing but shame and desperation. "Do you ever regret it?" Jackson asked quietly. "Coming west, everything you left behind?" "Never," Olivia said without hesitation. "My life began when I came here, when I met you. Everything before was just prologue. Even the hard parts," he pressed. "Even the pain," Olivia considered this. "I wouldn't choose to go through it again," she said honestly. "The shame, the betrayal, it was terrible, but it brought me here to you, to this life. And I wouldn't trade this life for anything. So no, I don't regret it. I'm grateful for where I ended up, even if the journey was painful." Jackson took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her wedding ring, now worn smooth by years of wear. "You know what I remember most about the day you arrived?" he asked. "What?" "How determined you looked," he said. "Dusty and tired and clearly scared, but your chin was up and your shoulders were back, and I could see that you were a fighter. I knew right then that you were going to be all right, that you were strong enough to survive whatever you were running from." "I didn't feel strong," Olivia admitted. "I felt broken." "You were hurt," Jackson corrected, echoing words he had spoken years ago. "Not broken. There's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed, but hurt things can heal. You healed, Olivia. You did the hard work of forgiving yourself, of building a new life. That takes incredible strength." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Olivia reflected on how far she had come. The woman who had stepped off that stagecoach 12 years ago barely recognized herself now. That Olivia had been consumed by shame, convinced she was unworthy of love or happiness. This Olivia knew better. She knew that mistakes did not define a person, that past pain did not prevent future joy, that with the right partner and enough determination, it was possible to build something beautiful from the ruins of what had been. "Thank you," she said to Jackson, not for the first time but meaning it as deeply as ever. "For seeing past my shame to who I really was, for giving me a chance when I didn't think I deserved one, for showing me that I could have a future worth living." "Thank you for trusting me," Jackson replied. "For being brave enough to try again after being hurt so badly. For building this life with me, for giving me James and Grace and William, for being my partner in everything." They kissed then, a gentle kiss full of years of shared history and deep, abiding love. When they separated, Olivia rested her head on Jackson's shoulder, feeling utterly content. Inside the house, their children slept safely. The ranch spread out around them, prosperous and well-managed. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human joy or sorrow. But here on the porch in this moment, everything was perfect. Years continued to pass as they do, bringing change and challenge but also joy and growth. The children grew up strong and healthy, each with their own personality and dreams. James showed an early aptitude for ranching and a love of the land that matched his father's. Grace was creative and spirited, always drawing or making up elaborate stories. William was the peacemaker, gentle and thoughtful, with a natural gift for working with animals. Olivia and Jackson grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, market downturns and cattle diseases, the normal trials of running a ranch. They celebrated good years and struggled through bad ones, always as partners, always supporting each other. In 1898, when James was 16, a letter arrived from St. Louis that Olivia had never expected to receive. It was from her mother, whom she had not heard from in years. Her father had passed away 2 years prior, the letter explained, and her mother was now living with Olivia's sister. The letter was tentative, reaching out to reconnect, asking forgiveness for the harsh way they had treated Olivia after the scandal. Olivia read the letter several times, emotions churning. The hurt of her family's rejection was old but not entirely healed. Yet she found that she was not as angry as she might have expected. She had built a good life despite their rejection, and that success made it easier to forgive. She discussed the letter with Jackson, and with his support, she wrote back. The correspondence that followed was cautious at first but gradually warmed. Olivia told her mother about her life, her husband, her children, the ranch. Her mother expressed regret for how things had ended, explained that she had been constrained by her husband's wishes but had always loved Olivia and wondered how she was. The reconciliation, conducted entirely through letters given the distance, was healing in ways Olivia had not anticipated. It helped close a wound she had not realized still needed closing. When her mother wrote to say how proud she was of the life Olivia had built, of the strength she had shown in starting over, Olivia cried happy tears. "My mother says she's proud of me," she told Jackson wonderingly. "I never thought I'd hear those words." "You should be proud of yourself," Jackson said, pulling her close. "Look at everything you've accomplished, everything you've overcome. You're an amazing woman, Olivia Carson." As the new century approached, the Carson Ranch was well established and respected throughout the region. Jackson had earned a reputation as a fair employer and smart businessman, and Olivia was known for her kindness and her skill at managing the household and accounts. Their children were thriving, and the ranch was prosperous enough to provide well for the whole family. On New Year's Eve of 1899, as the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Olivia and Jackson hosted a celebration at the ranch. Friends and neighbors came from all around to mark the occasion, and the house was full of music and laughter. As midnight approached, Olivia stood on the porch looking out at the gathered people, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. Mrs. Henderson came to stand beside her, now well into her 60s but still spry and sharp-minded. "You've come a long way from that scared girl who arrived at my boarding house," she observed kindly. "I have," Olivia agreed. "Thanks in no small part to you. You helped me when you didn't have to, believed in me when others might not have." "I just saw what was obvious," Mrs. Henderson said. "That you were a good person in a bad situation. I'm glad things worked out so well for you, dear. You deserve every bit of happiness you've found." As the clock struck midnight and 1900 arrived, Jackson found Olivia and pulled her into his arms, kissing her as fireworks lit up the Arizona sky. "Happy New Century," he murmured against her lips. "Happy New Century," she echoed, smiling. "Here's to the next 100 years." "I'll settle for the next 50 or so with you," he said with a grin. "That's all I need." The years of the new century brought more changes. James grew up and started taking on more responsibility at the ranch, working alongside his father with increasing skill and confidence. Grace showed artistic talent and began selling paintings of the Arizona landscape to tourists who passed through Jerome Junction. William, true to his gentle nature, became interested in veterinary medicine after helping deliver a difficult calf, and Jackson and Olivia supported his dream of going to school to study it formally. In 1905, James fell in love with Sarah, the daughter of a neighboring rancher, and Jackson and Olivia hosted a wedding that brought together families from all over the region. Watching her son marry, Olivia was struck by the continuity of it, the way life moved forward in cycles of love and family. James and Sarah's love was uncomplicated, untainted by the kind of betrayal and shame that had marked Olivia's first romantic experience. That made her deeply happy. When James and Sarah's first child was born the following year, a healthy boy they named Jackson after his grandfather, Olivia held her grandson and marveled at the strange twists of fate. If Marcus had not betrayed her, if she had not fled to Arizona in disgrace, this child would not exist. None of this would exist. The shame that had nearly destroyed her had actually been the catalyst for the greatest blessings of her life. "What are you thinking?" Jackson asked, coming to sit beside her as she rocked baby Jackson. "That I'm grateful," Olivia said simply. "For all of it, even the painful parts, because they led me here." "No more shame at all?" he asked, the question now an old and comfortable check-in between them. "None," she confirmed. "I've learned that shame only has power if you feed it. I starved mine out years ago, replaced it with love and purpose and family. I'm proud of who I am now, Jackson, proud of what we've built together." "So am I," he said softly. "So am I." As Olivia grew older, she became something of a mentor to other women in the area who faced difficulties or needed guidance. Her story, once a source of shame, became instead a testimony to the possibility of redemption and starting over. More than once, a young woman facing scandal or hardship would seek her out, and Olivia would share her experience, offering hope and practical advice. "Your past doesn't define your future," she would tell them, echoing Jackson's words from so long ago. "What happened before doesn't determine what comes next. You get to choose who you become." Some of the women took her advice and thrived. Others struggled, unable to let go of their shame and pain. Olivia understood both responses. She knew how hard it was to forgive yourself, to believe you deserved happiness after making mistakes. But she kept offering hope, kept sharing her story, because she knew that sometimes one person believing in you could make all the difference. In 1910, Olivia and Jackson celebrated their 28th wedding anniversary. All three of their children came to the ranch for the occasion: James with Sarah and their 3 children, Grace with her husband Thomas, whom she had married 2 years prior, and William, home from veterinary school in California. The house was full of noise and laughter, grandchildren running everywhere, and Olivia felt her heart might burst with joy. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, she and Jackson took their customary places on the porch. Jackson was 58 now, his dark hair threaded with silver, but still strong and capable. Olivia was 53, with lines around her eyes from years of smiling and sun, but she felt more beautiful than she ever had in her youth. True beauty, she had learned, came from being loved and loving in return, from building a life of meaning and purpose. 28 years, Jackson mused, feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. "I know what you mean," Olivia said. "When I think back to who I was when I arrived here, I can barely recognize that person. But it also feels like this has always been my life, like I was always meant to end up here with you." "Maybe you were," Jackson said. "I'm not much for fate and destiny, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. It feels like we were meant to find each other." "My shame brought me here," Olivia said reflectively. "My mistakes and pain and desperation, and you took that broken, scared woman and helped her become whole again. You showed me that past mistakes don't have to define your future, that it's possible to start over and build something beautiful. You did the hard work yourself, Jackson corrected gently. I just loved you and believed in you. You're the one who had the courage to try again, to trust again, to build this life. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the chirp of crickets, the whisper of wind through the juniper trees. This land, harsh and beautiful, had become home in the deepest sense. This life, built from the ruins of her old one, had become more than Olivia had ever dared dream. Thank you, she said to Jackson, as she had so many times before, for everything. For loving me, for believing in me, for building this life with me. For showing me that shame doesn't have to be forever, that redemption is possible. Thank you, he replied, for being brave enough to accept what I offered, for trusting me with your heart after it had been so badly broken, for being my wife, my partner, the mother of my children, for making every day of these 28 years worth living. They kissed then, a kiss that held decades of love and history, of shared joy and weathered trials, of absolute partnership and trust. When they finally went inside to bed, walking hand in hand through the house full of family, Olivia felt complete in a way she had never imagined possible all those years ago when she had fled St. Louis in disgrace. The years continued their steady march, bringing both joy and sorrow as all years do. Pete passed away in 1912, mourned by the entire ranch community. Grace's husband Thomas was kicked by a horse and broke his leg badly, but recovered thanks in part to William's veterinary expertise. James and Sarah had 2 more children, expanding the family further. The ranch continued to prosper, adapting to changing times and markets. In 1915, Olivia received word that her mother had passed away peacefully in St. Louis. Though they had never seen each other again after Olivia left Missouri, their correspondence over the years had healed old wounds, and Olivia grieved the loss genuinely. She was grateful that they had reconciled, that her mother had known about the good life she had built in Arizona, that there had been love and forgiveness between them at the end. As Olivia entered her 60s, she began to slow down a bit, letting Sarah take over more of the household management at the ranch. But she remained active, still cooking special meals for family gatherings, still tending her garden, still riding out occasionally with Jackson to check on the cattle. Her hair was silver now, her hands marked with age spots and work worn, but she felt more content than ever. In the summer of 1920, the family gathered to celebrate Olivia and Jackson's 38th anniversary. It was a huge gathering, with all 3 children, their spouses, and 7 grandchildren filling the house and yard. Someone had brought a camera, and they took photographs of the whole family, preserved moments that Olivia would treasure. That evening, looking at the photograph of herself and Jackson surrounded by their children and grandchildren, Olivia felt tears of happiness. This was her legacy, she realized. Not the shame and scandal that had marked her youth, but this, a strong family built on love and trust, a successful ranch that would continue for generations, relationships and memories that would outlast her lifetime. What are you thinking? Jackson asked, coming to stand behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. That I'm the luckiest woman alive, Olivia said. Look at all of this, Jackson. Look at what we built. We built it together, he reminded her. Every bit of it. I was thinking about that day Eleanor Whitmore confronted me in the general store, Olivia said. How certain I was that my life was over, that the shame would destroy me. And you told me my past didn't define my future here. You were so right, Jackson. It didn't. I got to choose what came next, and I chose this. I chose you and this life, and I've never regretted it for a single moment. Neither have I, Jackson said, turning her to face him. Loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life. Watching you heal and grow and become the amazing woman you are, building this family and this ranch with you. Growing old with you, it's been better than anything I could have imagined." They held each other there in the evening light, surrounded by the sounds of their family, the legacy of their love playing out in the laughter of grandchildren, and the easy affection between their grown children and their spouses. The shame that had once defined Olivia was gone completely now. Not even a memory, but just a thing that had happened long ago to someone she barely remembered being. In its place was this: love, family, purpose, belonging. A life well lived, full of meaning and joy. Redemption not given but earned, through hard work and courage, and the willingness to believe that second chances were possible. As the sun set over the Arizona mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red and purple, Olivia Carson looked at her life and knew with absolute certainty that she had found what she had been seeking when she fled to the Wild West all those years ago. She had found home, love, and most importantly, herself. The shame was gone, replaced by pride in what she had become, gratitude for the chances she had been given, and deep, abiding love for the man who had helped her see that her past did not have to define her future. And that, she thought, was the happy ending she had never dared believe she deserved but had found anyway, in a ranch house in Arizona territory, with a rancher who had seen past her shame to the woman she truly was. It was more than enough. It was everything.